Hey, entrepreneurs. This week, your challenge is to have a plan for those days where you show up at work and you just feel overwhelmed and rushed, because that tends to lead to a feeling of being scattered in your approach, leads to stress, which is not good for your long-term productivity or your short-term productivity. So I want you to have a plan in advance. Why? Because we all know in the moment of stress, that's the last time you should be trying to think on your feet to come up with the wisest long-term, far-sighted plan for how to get yourself out of that state. The time to plan that is when you're in a more meditative state, when you're thinking, when you're sipping a cup of coffee and planning how you're going to approach your work. In the same way that when I used to work in the clinical setting with people with depression, sometimes we would create what I call the worst case scenario box. And that was a set of reminders to themselves of the things that can pull them out of the depths of despair. One of the things that happens when we're depressed, when we get into a depressed mood, is we create a series of thoughts and beliefs and behaviors that are almost like, you might think of it like a rut in the human brain. Like a wagon wheel going down a dirt road can fall into a rut, and then you don't even need to direct the horses because that wheel stays stuck in that rut, that well-worn path. And our mind does that. Different mood states come with different kinds of thoughts. And so we can slip into a depressed mode of thinking, and it brings back all the thoughts that we had the last time we went through a major depressive episode. Of course, the same thing can happen in all kinds of different mood states. When you get more excited about your work, you tend to have certain kind of thought. When you're just mildly agitated, you tend to remember more easily other times, memories from the past when you were agitated come back to you. And so because of this feature of the human mind, where it's harder to think thoughts that are outside of the current mood state that you're in, that's why it's helpful when it comes to the stress state that nearly all entrepreneurs are destined to face at some point, even if they are very far-sighted. Do a lot of planning and structure their approach to work in such a way that doesn't rely on rushing and just-in-time work. It's still going to hit you because you're a problem solver. By nature, entrepreneurs, they are at the cutting edge, and so you're creating something from nothing, and there's going to be problems, right? And so that's your challenge for today, is to think ahead and plan for, all right, what am I going to do now so that I have a filter, a mental filter in place, ready to use on one of those days where I just feel like I can't even think. There's so many things on my plate right now. I have things that maybe, if I'm honest with myself, I procrastinated on, and now I've got to get them done today. But at the same time, it just happens to be the day when all of my team or all of my customers need something done now, and everything feels like the top priority. What do? Well, I want to show you a couple of options. The key here is that we want to give you back a sense of control. Why? Because on a psychological and physiological, so the neuropsychophysiological level, it's pretty much everything, you're going to do better if you have a sense of control. There's been a number of research studies in animal models and human experimentation that shows if you can give back a person a sense of control, stress goes down. Even if the stressor, even if the stressful situation is still there, if you feel more in control, then the negative physical effects are practically gone. And so that tells us a lot about the power of control. So anything you can do to give yourself back that sense of, all right, it is stressful, but I have a plan. I'm in control of attacking it, of going after the things that I can control and focusing my mind on those, the better you're going to do. So I'm just going to share my screen here and show you two strategies that you can use to take back control whenever you're starting to feel that you're just having one of those days where everything's a priority and you don't know where to start. All right, here we go. So this is a structure that I use across all different aspects of my productivity coaching with entrepreneurs, is that we always start with deciding it. I was actually just talking yesterday with Dr. Alan Barnard, who's he's the researcher who's finished his PhD largely based on a lot of the constructs, the concepts created by Eliyahu Goldratt, who is the creator of the theory of constraints. And Dr. Barnard has taken some of those theories a couple of steps further in his research and practical application. One of the things he was telling me is that, in his opinion, success really boils down to four basic pillars. And the first two you can't really control much, and the second two you can. And so those pillars, starting at the top, are genetics. You might have been born with an unusually high IQ. You might have been born very attractive person. You can't really control those very well, the genetics that were handed to you. The second thing that is out of your control is luck. Let's be honest, there are many business owners that showed up and did a lot of things wrong, but they were in the right place at the right time, and luck smiled on them and they got some fantastic results. And in the same way, there are some times where we show up and we do the right things, but luck was not stacked in our favor. Now, there are some strategies we can use to engineer luck on purpose, but that's a topic for another day. The third pillar is working hard, and that is something you can control. But because that's something that most ambitious entrepreneurs do already, it's not something I focus on much. The fourth, and this is where Dr. Barnard and I share this belief, is decisions. It's like the decisions you make. That's the fourth pillar of success. Where you allocate your time, energy, and attention, your limited resources, where you focus, who you spend your time with, how you focus your time, and which kind of businesses you start. Those all are about decisions. Even once you started a business, you've got to decide, where am I going to focus to get the maximum leverage out of myself, my team? And so what are we deciding? On a day when you just need to figure out, what can I do to just survive this day? There are two things you can think about. Where's the leverage? And then what can I subtract? This is actually a tiny microcosm of a bigger productivity concept that you can use in nearly any aspect of productivity, no matter how long range or farsighted we're talking. If you're just always looking for, okay, productivity comes down to decision making, deciding where I'm going to find leverage, what I'm going to subtract. And so when it comes to where's the leverage, we're looking, of course, for the things that require the least risk, the least effort, and the most options. Now, that's a concept that comes from CCA. CCA stands for Certified Certainty Advisor, and that's the program I recently went through with Dan Nicholson and Nick Peterson, two of my mentors who have unlocked a lot of success secrets for business and personal life. And this is a concept that's used to actually engineer luck on purpose, because if you are structuring your decisions in such a way that you're not always going all out, spending all of your energy 100% of the time. So you're looking for things that require less effort so that you still have more available to deploy at the right moments. So it's not about trying to find the easy road through life, but rather trying to be strategic and having some reserves ready to deploy when the right moments appear. And the least risk, because risk is not actually a part of success. It's like some entrepreneurs I've spoken with say, oh, well, risk is good because that's what leads to really success, high levels of success. But in reality, risk is the price you pay. It's not something that you want deliberately. You don't want more risk. What you actually want is the things that risk can help you achieve. And so you want to look for ways to mitigate risk and reduce risk, not go after it on purpose. But sometimes taking some risk is a good thing. And then, of course, you want to structure your decisions in a way that leaves you with the most options, so that as you see how reality unfolds, you're able to react in a way that makes it appear to others like you were just in the right place in the right time. That guy, he was just lucky. That's why he succeeded. But in reality, you purposely engineered your approach such that you weren't sure how reality was going to unfold. So you engineered your approach so that you were able at that moment, once reality revealed itself, to take the path that led to sudden gains or sudden improvements. And so that's a bit of a side concept, but it's related to looking for leverage. And then, of course, you want to look for that one thing that makes everything else faster and easier. That's a longer term concept that comes from the productivity principle, that a lot of the leverage comes from being farsighted, hiring somebody way before you need them to be trained so that they're ready to take something off your plate, so that you can then put your attention to the higher level thinking strategy that needs to be done by the CEO or the business owner. But if we take this concept of asking where's the leverage and we just apply it to a single day when you're feeling overwhelmed, there's often things that you can do to buy yourself some time. So for example, instead of trying to do everything on your list, there might be one thing where you had committed to someone, but you realize that's a person where if I call them and I say, hey, I know I committed to accomplish this by this time, but I need another 3 days for that because I will do a better job under those circumstances. And then there's some other things where that's just not possible. The IRS doesn't care. If you're going to be late on your taxes, the penalty will be due regardless. You can use leverage to try to figure out which things need to be done first, second, third. The other thing is, what will I subtract? And to help with both of those concepts, this is a productivity to-do list strategy that I've shown before, but it's worth just noticing that this is one of the filters that you could have ready. on one of those days where you feel overwhelmed. And that's just to take a piece of paper, if you like doing this on paper, and just creating these 3 columns. And the columns are the month and the week and the day. And so what you do is you just say, all right, of all the things that are piling in on me, which things could need to be done at some point this week, and put those in this weekly column. And then there's going to be other things that you say, actually, it just needs to be done sometime this month, and I'm going to create a plan for coming back to that later. And then there's some things that just have to get done today. So what you're doing here is you're subtracting, you're filtering out. We're using that David Allen principle that has been proven even more over the decades since he first published his seminal work called Getting Things Done. And he showed that if you can get things out of your mind, that most people then are able to bring a higher level of cognitive ability to whatever task that you then choose to focus on. So literally writing things on paper, putting things in tickler files, which these days we have endless electronic methods for doing so. Get it out of your head, out of your memory, and you're actually able to do a better job, work faster on the things that are left. That's what this whole system is. It's just about saying, all right, what can I delay a little bit? And then the other thing is just to consider the roles that you have. So let's just look at the roles that you have in life. If sometimes when you're feeling overwhelmed, it helps just to break it down. This gives you back a sense of control. So you might say, okay, there's too many things all trying to grab for my attention all at once. But if I'm honest with myself, the role of, let's say being a mom or dad, let's just say parent here is one role. That might include, calling somebody to go pick up your son at soccer practice because you're just going to have to stay late today. And that instantly can release some stress, just thinking, okay, what other roles do I have as a parent? Okay, need to have some dinner for the kids tonight. So I'm going to use the app on my phone to order pizza. It's not the favorite long-term nutrition plan, but today, given my circumstances, that's what we're going to do. Then you might have business 1. And this might have, you might break this down further, but business 1, maybe you have a partnership here. And this is one of these partnerships where the two of you have created something, you've committed to be available to accomplish something, and there's a high level of leverage to getting some things done here. So you just list a couple of things here. Again, what we're doing by breaking this down is we're trying to decrease the feeling that you're out of control. We're trying to give you back a control so you can choose which role is most important, given your values, given what your commitments are in life, and then what tasks that are floating around in your head are associated with these different roles. So you might have business 2, and maybe this is just some startup idea, and it's just you, and you've just gotten off the floor, and you just have maybe 2 assistants helping you with some research. It doesn't actually have to get done today. It could be pushed back. And so that's, again, one of the reasons why you might choose to write down the different roles. Sometimes you also might put something here like self-care. You're kind of like your own coach when it comes to self-care, whether you need to get to the dentist or the doctor or go exercise or take some time to meditate and de-stress or just organize your basement if that takes away the stress for you. There might be a list of things on here that you just want to get them off your plate, and you realize that it has to do with self-care. Sometimes you'll see opportunities to leverage one self-care activity that allows you to succeed and do a better job with something else higher on that list, because it puts you into a different energetic state where you're better able to think about certain things. Now, we do want to be careful with this, whether it's roles or whether it's this concept of just breaking things down into time, like when is it actually due? We do want to keep in consideration the fact that sometimes we forget. Not sometimes. This is a very normal thing. Almost all the time, entrepreneurs are good at thinking ahead, except for in the moment. The closer we get to any moment in time at work, if you don't have a plan in advance for where you're going to allocate your time, the more vulnerable you are to doing the unimportant but urgent stuff. And that comes back to that old Eisenhower matrix that I'm sure you've seen before, where there's some tasks that are urgent and important. There's some tasks that are urgent and unimportant, and those are the ones that you want to just delete as much as possible. And then there's some tasks that are not urgent and not important, and some tasks that are not urgent but they are important. And these are the ones that you want to time box. Those ones that they're not urgent but they're important. They're the things that you'll look back at a year from now, and if you didn't make progress on them, you'll feel frustrated, versus if you did, they could make a significant difference to your life or to your business, to your personal goals. And so those are the things you want to create a time box for, because they won't happen otherwise. They'll always get pushed out of the way by the urgent stuff. So we want to keep that Eisenhower matrix concept in mind when you are thinking through the different roles you have and the different time scales you have for getting things done. So with this day, week, month system, you're just changing your perspective on, does everything really have to get done today? With the roles method, you're really just saying, which of my roles is most critical to my well-being? Where do I need to show up? And I just can't afford to fail. And again, what you're doing through all of that is you are looking for what can be subtracted, and you're looking for where the leverage really is. My challenge for you is not to just adopt these small examples that I could give you 10 examples for each of these concepts of how people have actually used, these kinds of different lists and prioritization schedules. That's not the point. The point really is just to show you that there are certain things that if you plan in advance on those days when I notice I'm holding my breath a little bit because of this feeling of I have to rush, this tension that you're holding inside because everything's piling on you at once, have a plan before you get to those days. So that's your challenge for this week. Think through, what is that for you? What systems or strategies can you have ready so that it's kind of like your worst case scenario box you pull out from under your bed and you open it up, and it's got a few pictures that remind you of who you know you're capable of being if you rise to the challenge. And it's got a few systems in there that says, all right, first get it on paper, then think about which role is most important. Then let's consider, does it really need to be done today? If you use that strategy to be prepared, what you're doing is you're being more farsighted about yourself as an entrepreneur. You're thinking about your own productivity and your own well-being far enough in advance that you're going to do a better job when those days inevitably arise. Hope that's useful to you, and I'll see you again next week.